Hey, how you going, guys? I'm quite liking this live stream format. So obviously I like my fundamental analysis style videos where I go and do my research, and I'll continue to make those a pretty big focus of the channel, as well as my technical analysis. But I quite like these live ones where we can do the live question, live feedback. So guys, I'll keep an eye on the live chat as we move through, but I just want to present to you the facts. And obviously this channel was created to get the Australian and now global crypto community as well informed as possible with everything I've learned since I discovered Bitcoin in 2012. So obviously we want to always try and give unbiased opinions wherever possible. So let's jump into Ripple, and obviously I'm going to try and answer a lot of the questions that I'm getting both for and against. And it's funny, it's very polarizing, people's opinions on Ripple, because of that involvement with the banks. So first thing I just want to touch on is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, blockchain technology came out of this cypherpunk movement. So using cryptography in encryption, privacy-based technologies to try and bring about social and political change. And Bitcoin and now other cryptocurrencies allow us to work outside the legacy financial system. It's all going great. And one thing that certainly I've noticed lately, and what concerns me most, is that without putting my conspiracy theory hat on too much, all we see is bad press about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Still today in Australia, we get articles published just this week about how Bitcoin is a darknet currency used to buy drugs and fund terrorism. And it's just nonsense. And now we see Ripple come along, and the CEO is getting interviewed on CNBC, the mainstream media, and he's talking about how bank settlements are so slow and it's clunky to use the financial system. And now we finally have the solution, and it's Ripple. And it's like, well, hold on a second. We've had the solution for 9 years now. It's Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, and they're saying, well, it's so fast and cheap to transact. Well, guys, if you have been into cryptocurrency for any length of time, there's dozens of cryptocurrencies that are fast, cheap, anonymous. Take your pick of your favorite crypto or community that allows you to transfer value. So for the mainstream media to be bashing all our favorite coins, and particularly Bitcoin, because it is anonymous and it's a decentralized ledger, and for them now to be embracing Ripple because it is owned by the banks, and obviously the banks own the corporate media, and that link is there. So they want a system that they can control, and they very much fear decentralized cryptocurrencies which they can't control. So that's the first thing to be aware of. And for some people, that doesn't come into their equations when investing. And guys, that's fine. I'm just trying to present to you all the facts so that before you make an investment decision, you're at least aware of it. So some people, for them, investing is just about making money, and all they want to know is the price of something going to go up or down, and that's fine. But other people, comes into their belief systems, or which coins are going to change the world and do this or that. So all those things, that only you can answer that question about what you put the most weight in. So first of all, the thing that a lot of people worried about is circulating supply versus total supply of Ripple. So Ripple, unlike Bitcoin and a lot of other cryptocurrencies that are mined, where the computers verify transactions and they get rewarded with a small amount of Bitcoin with proof of work, and that mints new Bitcoins, and the amount of Bitcoins created is slowly going down over time. It halves every 4 years. But some cryptocurrencies like Ripple are entirely already created. They're called pre-mined. So there's 100 billion Ripple that exist out there. Now Ripple was created by the company. So Ripple Labs, it's a company that's been around since 2012. And that's the other thing that you really need to get your head around. The term Ripple, people use it quite interchangeably, and they don't understand what they're talking about. So people can say Ripple, but they can mean Ripple, the company, so Ripple Labs, the Ripple payment protocol itself, which is their ledger for the settlement of payment between the banks. And then there's the XRP token, which people refer to as Ripple. So all three of those things are being called Ripple in conversation, but they're actually very different. And that's the other thing that I don't think people are understanding. We'll explore the statement that I'm investing in Ripple because it's going to go up in price because the banks are using it. And that's, let's dive in and explore that statement and that thinking. So the Ripple payment protocol is it's an exchange network for settlement between the banks because currently it's very slow. So they're trying to use blockchain technology to create a way that's faster and cheaper and better than what they currently have. But what a lot of people don't realize, and let's just jump over here, that the Ripple payment protocol, or Ripple Pay, Ripple Net, you might hear it a few different terms, but Ripple allows its users to issue and transact in any currency. So I think that's the first thing that a lot of people aren't aware of. When one bank pays another bank, they can pay each other in US dollars or euros or Bitcoin. Okay, they don't have to use XRP. They don't have to use Ripple as their reserves. And that's what a lot of people are thinking. Banks have got billions of dollars in reserves, and if all that starts to get used to pay each other, the price of Ripple will go up. But the fact is that Ripple can be used as one of the options, but if banks have got billions of dollars of euros or US dollars as reserves, I don't really see why all of a sudden they're going to switch to use XRP, the Ripple tokens, if they can pay each other in US dollars and do that fast with low transactions fees. And XRP tokens are used to pay those transaction fees. So that's a positive. That's saying, that is a demand. But then the fact is they're arguing how cheap this is. So, it's a tenth or 100th of a cent to send a transaction. So they're calling it near free. So near zero payments for Ripple. So then if you're saying, a transaction fee is 1/100th of a cent, and that's the only real use case for the XRP token, then, that's actually not really going to create a high demand, is it? If 100 transactions might cost 1 cent, and there's, hundreds of billions of dollars of Ripple out there, theoretically the market cap value. So what is the real demand for XRP? And a lot of people think that all these banks are using Ripple and using XRP. So they're not. They're using the Ripple protocol itself, which is a great protocol. Ripple Labs is full of smart people. They've created this ledger, but let's be aware that they've created it for the banks. Okay, this isn't a decentralized system where anyone can, verify the ledger like in Bitcoin. We have thousands of nodes around the world all verifying the network. In Ripple, it's only a year or so ago, it was very few people. It's the banks. So you've got to be anyone can run a node in the Ripple network. So now it is an open source protocol. So anyone can go to GitHub and get their protocol, and anyone can run a node, but you're not going to verify transactions for the Ripple network. A bank isn't going to say, yeah, Alex, you can start verifying all our big transactions, unless you're trusted and known to the network. So as banks, big exchanges and all those things are known and trusted to the network, then they can act as a node for the network and verify transactions. So again, some people are saying, well, that is decentralized to some degree, but only in July, I think there was only 50 nodes that are verifying transactions. Now and again, it comes into, well, that can be a target. If the hackers know which 50 people are running nodes and they can be targeted, it's not even though it's not, just one company and centralized with the servers. You can argue it's slightly decentralized, but other people would say, no, that is still very centralized. And obviously the other thing which is incredibly centralized is the fact that Ripple Labs own the other 61 billion Ripple that aren't yet in circulation. So circulating supply 38 billion, total supply 100 billion. So 62 billion, 62% of that supply is owned by one company. So obviously that argument is, it's very centralized. And the other point I want to talk about there is people say, well, as more banks use it, that's good. But the fact is, if more banks start using it, a lot of the time they give them Ripple as an incentive. So when can that supply come onto the market or come onto the network? How does that work? And the maximum is 1 billion Ripple per month. So, in theory, we can add another billion Ripple every month to the total supply. And often that's, like I said, it's used to incentivize businesses. So it is in some ways downward pressure on the price. So yeah, all these things I just want you to be aware of. So next thing I want to talk about is the other argument for centralization. So there was a bit of a fallout here between one of the founders of Ripple. So Jed McCaleb left the company, created Stellar Lumens, which is a hard fork of Ripple. A bit of a disagreement there. He wanted to sell all his Ripple, and they said, that wasn't in our agreement. This went to court. This was back in 2014 now, and at the time, as I said, there's only a few nodes running and maintaining the ledger, so they can say, hold on, we're going to freeze those funds. Now, obviously, no one can freeze Bitcoin if I send it to one person, or Litecoin or anything. So yeah, there's more nodes running it now, but in theory, if something bad was to happen, Ripple Labs can send out an email to the 50 or 100 nodes at all the banks and say, hey, something bad's happened, let's freeze these funds, let's rebalance this ledger. So maybe the network can say no, it's not the right thing to do, but certainly it had happened in the past where they froze funds. And Jed McCaleb is still selling his funds. He's allowed to sell a certain amount each month. So guys, the next thing to talk about is it a good or bad thing, the banks? So banks using it, again, this comes down to your moral beliefs about, well, why would I use Ripple for me to pay you if the argument is it's better than the banks? Well, I can pay you in Litecoin or Ethereum, and it's very, very cheap. The difference between 1 cent or a tenth of a cent or 100 of a cent, it's not that, who cares really? And the difference between Ripple settling in 5 seconds versus Ethereum's 15 seconds block time, or a minute or so, 2 minutes for Litecoin. These aren't huge deals in the real world, whether or not it takes a few seconds or a couple of minutes, really. So the list can go on. I could talk about a number of privacy coins, even other coins that have near instant transactions. So that obviously take your pick. So there's a number of arguments that we can say, well, there's no real need for that. We already have things that allow for this. The other thing a lot of people have been talking about lately is Coinbase going to add Ripple? So here's a tweet from Brian Armstrong from 2015. So Ripple, Stellar, which is a hard fork of Ripple, and altcoins are all a distraction. So he's saying, as far as cryptocurrency goes, and this is before we had all these tokens doing individual projects in individual industries, Bitcoin is far ahead. We should be focused on Bitcoin and the side chain. So, a lot of people think it's a given that Coinbase is going to list Ripple, and this is the criteria for listing new coins, and one of them is decentralization. So is the network public, decentralized, and enables trustless consensus? And as I've just described, to run a node in Ripple, you've got to be trusted. People want to know who you are. So again, I think that literally puts a red cross against Ripple for being listed by Coinbase. So, hey, I could be wrong. Maybe they do list it, but I'm just going off their criteria that they've listed here about how easy it is to use. Can anyone use it? Is it solving these problems? So, yeah, there's a few criteria it does meet, but this enables trustless consensus, and is it decentralized? I'd probably say that no. Ripple's not trying to do that. Ripple is trying to be that payment settlement layer for the banks. Andreas Antonopoulos is another one that's come out in the past and spoken openly that he's not a fan of Ripple and these centralized coins when the whole revolution and getting away from the banks and financial institutions, which have caused so much bad in the world. That's the point of cryptocurrency and decentralized blockchain technology. So guys, that's the thoughts. Obviously, if you believe that Ripple is going to be used by more and more banks, and more people come on board, more and more of them will switch to using XRP as a method of payment, then sure, then the argument is there that if they capture those trillions of dollars that wash around the global financial system each day, replace the SWIFT network, then the value of Ripple could go up. But let's have a look at what's realistic. So now that Ripple's already got a market cap of around 80 or 90 billion dollars, a lot of people don't look at the market cap. They've got this what we call unit bias. So people will look at Ripple and Ethereum, particularly newcomers, and they'll, $2 to them is cheap, and I can only afford one Ethereum maybe for $880. Oh, I can get 440 Ripple for that, and that unit bias that they can tell their friends how many units of something they own. Whereas the reality is, in the real world, what determines the price goes up. If Ripple wants to go from $2 to $4, it's just as hard as if Ethereum wants to double. It's no easier because the price is a smaller number. The market cap has to go to 90 billion, and same as Ethereum. That we've got to find that new money to flow in and increase the market cap size, as well as no new coins come into circulation. So there's a number of ways why people just think that Ripple is going to go higher in price because it's easier, because it's only $2. And again, guys, that's not how these things work in economics. So, guys, that's pretty much everything that I really wanted to talk about. I'll start taking some questions now from you guys. But yeah, the Ripple company is a fantastic company. There's smart people that work there. They're creating this ledger because the bank system is so archaic. It hasn't been upgraded for years. So that Ripple protocol, that payment and exchange network, that's what they're trying to do. They're tackling a problem, but they are tackling it for the banks. And that's very different to the XRP token, whose native currency is those Ripples, those XRP, and that is used to pay transaction fees, which are tiny. So again, you've got to decide, if you bought Ripple because you thought you were investing in Ripple, the company, or the protocol. So again, did you realize that you're actually just investing in that XRP token, which is just used to pay fees on that network? Did you realize that the banks can actually still just pay each other in US dollars or euros, or they can pay each other in Bitcoin if they want, and it's just ledger, balance, and that tiny little fee gets paid in XRP in Ripple. So I'll start to take some questions now, guys. Hopefully I've presented this in a reasonably unbiased, factual manner. Again, personally, I don't own any Ripple. For me, cryptocurrency is about that decentralized nature. But again, if you just are simply viewing Ripple an investment, maybe you're not fussed about that, and that's fine. I'm not telling you what to do or not to do. So as far as CoinMarketCap, goes, yeah, they did have to have a play around with what determined the market cap. So circulating supply, a few years ago, there was coins were just listed by total supply times price, whereas now it's circulating supply, and they have to have the little asterisk if it's pre-mined. So yeah, CoinMarketCap, not mineable. So CoinMarketCap has changed over the years as well. And we see the little star there representing that it's not mineable, it is pre-mined. So yeah, even the banks and the big four banks in Australia, we've spoken about them a lot recently. They're all saying that instant transaction settlements between different banks are coming next year. So even the banks themselves are starting to say, hey, we have to do something. We've got to get better. This blockchain technology is coming. So the banks themselves might try and warm to the idea of Ripple, but then they're just going to use it themselves. They'll use something else. Or the other argument that people can make is, well, if the US created SWIFT system sees Ripple as a threat, why wouldn't they hack it, or why wouldn't they start to implement blockchain technology themselves, why would they just let Ripple, who sure people don't like Ripple because it's banks and slightly centralized, but it's actually more decentralized than the banks. So it's kind of that intermediary. So even the banks might hate Ripple for being more decentralized than them, and then obviously a lot of people don't like Ripple because it's more centralized than most cryptocurrencies. So it's whatever lens you're looking at it through. You can make arguments for and against. So complete explains what Ripple company can dump anytime. No, so guys, I've spoken about how it's 1 billion per month is the limit that they can release. The other argument that people make is, well, when you pay fees in Ripple, it gets burnt, so that reduces the total supply from that 100 billion number. And I think someone worked out, yeah, I did do the math on this as well. So the maximum transactions per second Ripple can do 1,500 a second. So let's say that the network was running at the max capacity, 1,500 a second, and I did the math, and it would still take 300,000 years for the supply of Ripple to be reduced to zero. So, even 1,000 years, it's something like, in 1,000 years from now, the total supply of Ripple is reduced by 0.3%. So it's absolutely negligible. Using that as an argument, saying, well, Ripple gets burnt, that's a good thing, it'll reduce supply, it's absolutely negligible. It doesn't matter. In 100 years' time, there'll still be 100 billion Ripple minus 0.0003 or something like that. So guys, that's probably it for tonight. Yeah, I don't mean to try and put across a negative point of view or a positive point of view. The arguments for and against, hopefully I've explained. If you believe that this is going to be widely used, all the banks will use it, it's going to overtake the SWIFT payment system, then yeah, the argument can be made that it can appreciate in value, but just be aware that it's very difficult. Now we're in the huge market cap ballpark. People buying this simply because they think the price is going to go to Ethereum and Bitcoin like prices, it's near impossible for that to happen because of how big the market cap would have to be. So that unit bias I've explained the difference between the protocol, the company, and the token. I've explained how new supply can get on the market. I've explained how tokens get burned. I've explained the criteria for being listed on Coinbase. I hope that all makes sense, guys. Share these videos around, hit like, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.